Welcome to our Inward Circle assembly this afternoon. I'm so excited to have my friend and colleague, Lisa Nichols, here. She is such a delightful human and is so knowledgeable about so many things. And so let me tell you a little bit about her. Lisa Gay Nichols helps parents resolve conflict with their teenagers and have peace in their homes. After her own experience with a teen who struggled, Lisa left the corporate world to support parents as they find their way through the teen years. She is a certified life coach, certified EFT practitioner, and best-selling author with 2 books on parenting teens. Lisa lives in Concord, California, which is near me in California, and I am so very grateful to have her here. I have had the pleasure of having her in my community and have seen her facilitate different workshops on well-being for women, and so you are in for a treat today. So Lisa, is there anything else you wanted to tell us about yourself, or should we just dig into the tapping?
Digging into tapping is great, and just thank you, Katie, for having me here. I'm so appreciative.
So tell us a little bit first, before we dig into potentially doing some tapping. Tell us about a little bit more about what emotion freedom technique is and how to people, because I know not everyone's familiar with what tapping is.
Sure. EFT, or emotional freedom techniques, it's been around since the 80s, and it came out of a different field called thought field therapy, but it's very similar. And it's considered energy psychology, a form of energy psychology. And it works, it's also called tapping, because you literally are tapping on parts of your body. And it's on the meridian points. And they've actually found a physical, biological system that mirrors the meridians. It's called the premovascular system. And it's just fascinating that what has been known for 5,000 years is now being kind of proven through scientific research today. So EFT works, it helps to kind of rewire the brain. The limbic system is pre-verbal. You could say it's pre-verbal. And so you can talk at it all you want, but it's not going to really hear you. So the limbic system with the amygdala and the hippocampus and all of that, that's where it stores all of your emotional memories related to events that happened to you in your past or experiences that you had. And EFT is able to, because you're doing the tapping and you're talking out loud and you're talking about the things that have come up for you, it's like this combination of acupuncture, because you're working on the meridians, acupressure, I should say, and somatic therapy and exposure therapy and cognitive therapy. You're kind of like combining them all together. And so it's been, there are a lot of research studies that have shown that it decreases cortisol production, other stress hormones. It's like a way to reset your body so that it's ready to heal. It's a way to reset your limiting beliefs and your emotional triggers or charges that you have that don't serve you in your life anymore, and you'd like to let them go. There's an advanced technique called matrix reimprinting, which is also very powerful for working with your younger selves when they went through a traumatic experience. And it's just such a great way, like I said, to just calm your emotions that you're related to memories or stress or whatever's going on in your life, and reset limiting beliefs. What else? What other questions do you have?
That all sounds fantastic. Because there's a lot of those stressors going on, well, broadly for everyone right now. And I know for my educator community, it's just such a unique, challenging time for us, as some people are going back to school, some people are doing distance learning, and there's challenges with all those 2 sides and everything in between. So anything we can do to help reset things and to minimize those cortisol responses and those kinds of things will be fantastic. So I would love for you to teach us about the tapping points and how to do it, because I know for me, like when I first ever heard about tapping, I was like, wait, how do I do this? And that was like one of the things that got in the way of me trying it ever for a long time, because I was, like, am I doing it right? How do I make sure it works? So tell us those kinds of things, a little bit about how we can make sure we do it in a way that's gonna get us benefits.
It is actually, once you know it, it is actually simple. It can seem a little intimidating, but um, you can do it at home. You don't have to do it with a practitioner. That's one of the other great things about it. It, uh, it also is really good with children, and children respond very quickly to it because you know how children are. They process things so much faster than us adults who have years and years of built up stuff within us. So you always start tapping by tapping on the side of the hand just below the pinky finger. We call it the karate chop point. And you start tapping there and you say what's called a setup statement. And the setup statement always starts with even though, and then you say what your issue is, and then you end with some acknowledgement that you accept, that you acknowledge and accept that that's the way you feel right now, that that's what's going on for you right now. And you can tap with either hand, it doesn't matter. And just the tapping, it's not real hard, but it's not real light, it's just whatever feels comfortable to you. You're tapping with 2 or 3 fingers. And so the setup statement maybe, like I said, it's even though I'm feeling all this stress in my body, I acknowledge and I accept, sorry, let me just use the one I always use, which is I deeply love and completely accept myself. So you're saying that, again, you're just acknowledging and accepting that that's how you feel. And we always start the tapping with what you might think of as negative, and it's not that we're trying to, like the law of attraction, things like that say don't say the negative things, focus on the positive. But this is what we're working on. This is what we're telling our body. This is what's true for me right now, and this is what I'm working on. And so you tap on the negative aspect of it for a period of time until you feel a shift, until you kind of run out of things to say. And then you can shift into like the more positive aspects or a reframe. We call it a reframe. So let me go back to the tapping points. So from the karate chop point, this is the only time that we use the karate chop point is when we do our setup statement. And then we go to tapping on meridian points on the body. And I was trained to start at the top of the head. Not all EFT practitioners do. So the top of the head, and then you go to the top of the eye, which is really the inside of your eyebrow. And so it's just right where the hair meets the bridge of your nose. And then the side of the eye on the bone, and then under the eye, and then under the nose, and under the lip, kind of the crease of the chin. I'm a little distracted because I wanted to tell people you don't need to remember these because we'll be doing them again. And yeah, okay. And then the collarbone point, which it's not quite on the collarbone, it's just about an inch below it where there's a soft indent below it. And then we go to under the arm, which on a woman is basically where your bra strap falls. And then you go back to the top of the head. So while you're tapping on these points, you are saying out loud, you can say to your inside, just in your head as well, but it often helps to say it out loud. Kind of reminder phrases or those things that you're feeling. So in the stress example, you would be saying all this stress. I have all this stress in my body. I'm feeling so much stress. And you kind of keep tapping until you get all the different aspects of it. And that's one of the key points for making sure that tapping is effective. And that is what you're tapping on can have different aspects, kind of different layers. And so let's say you're in a car accident and you kind of get afraid of driving after that. And so you're tapping on the car accident and you tap on the actual crash, the injuries, the waiting for the ambulance, whatever you're tapping on, but you didn't tap on, say, the screech of the tires and the actual sound of the car crashing. So then next time you hear the screech of tires, you may actually get thrown back into a little bit of the trauma. So it's just like really looking at what are all the different aspects, what are all the different feelings and kind of layers. And it sounds complicated, but it's not. I don't want people to think it's really complicated.
So is it kind of, so just let me see if I recap. So
Right.
there's no wrong way to do it. Like you just can tap through any of your emotions that you're feeling. But if you maybe, like what I'm hearing is that if you notice that something keeps coming up around it where you thought you had a shift, it may also be because you skipped some step in the feeling process of like all the feelings that were layered on there. So you could then go back and work on that particular, like really think about like what were all the steps that were involved in what was sort of bringing me some stress or harder feelings. Am I understanding that correctly?
Exactly right. That's perfectly said. Yes. Yes. And so before we actually start our setup statement, we also we kind of look within and we identify kind of the intensity of the feelings. So on a scale of 0 to 10, with 0 being, I don't feel anything really, to 10 being as intense as possible, very intense. You kind of look within and you say, okay, let's say if I'm feeling stress, what level would I give that stress? And the reason you do that is so that when you're tapping, you kind of measure how is it working. So let's say you start out at an 8 and you do some tapping and it goes down to a 5. Well, then you're like, great, we're going in the right direction. But okay, what's still there? What's still part of that 5? And like I said, it's like peeling onions. A lot of times you can tap through the first layer of emotions. Like a lot of times anger will cover up fear. So you might tap through the anger, and then as you're tapping, other things will come up and other emotions. And so then you would do maybe another session and go on the next layer down. It tends to be like the first session is a little longer, and then because you're kind of already there and you're already doing the work, the next sessions go pretty fast and you're able to tap through things pretty quickly.
And is there any tips on knowing when to shift into the reframe, or just like if you went from an 8 to a 5, that to me that would be great to me. If I could go from an 8 to a 5 on, say, a stress level, would that be a time where I could shift then into doing some of the reframing work?
Yes, and you just kind of know. Some of it is practice, but you just kind of will feel a shift. When you're tapping on anger or stress or something, and you just are like, but I kind of like to. I'm willing to let go of this, or I'm ready to move on from this, or I want to kind of calm and peaceful place around this. You just kind of get to know when you're ready, or like I said, if you run out of things to say.
Yeah, and if you were um, not, I'm just curious because in terms of the benefits, if you weren't like sure what to say and you just like said how you were like your feeling word, could you say the same statement over and over again through all the points?
You can,
Okay.
and some practitioners do it that way.
Okay.
I tend to bring in other things, or sometimes with my clients, I can even kind of like guess kind of what the impact of that is to them, or something. But some practitioners will just say, I am so angry, all this anger that I'm feeling. I'm holding on to so much anger, and that even works. And I
Just
think
curious because if people were like, oh, can I do this by myself? Just making sure that they would feel that they could still just do something really simple and really make it work. Awesome. And so I would love, if you're up for it, to walk us through a round of tapping, or a couple rounds, however you think it would work best. And I had mentioned to you that our group was, relayed some stress around all of the uncertainty in the world right now, and in particular around our educational practices, you know, what it'll be like if we're in person or doing distance learning, or, you know, all lots of unknowns. And there's some stress around that. And I would love to be able to shift through that, because one of the things that's really big in the program is to help everybody really focus in on their circle of influence, what they do have control over. But I know that if they were able to release some of that tension and shift around sort of that stuff that's out of our control a bit, if they could just release some of that stress, I think that would help, in whatever way that might look. I know that it might be on a smaller scale, but any shifts would, I think, clear up for them and give them more capacity to make progress in other ways around, you know, making sure they take good care of themselves.
Absolutely. And I also would like to say that tapping on a regular basis, like tapping even for 10 or 15 minutes every day, can be such a huge shift in how you're feeling about things. When I wrote my first book, I'll always remember this, when I wrote my first book, I wrote it in about 10 days. And it's a tapping book. And I wrote about 24 tapping scripts in those 10 days. So I was just really tapping a lot and going through and focusing on the tapping. And after those 10 days, I felt like I was levitating. My energy was just so both grounded and yet alive, and it felt wonderful. And so if you can take 10 to 15 minutes every day and just do some tapping, it can really shift things for you. Kate, I didn't ask you this before, but maybe I can ask you, are you willing to be kind of, not the guinea pig, but the...
I'll be the guinea pig.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, totally. And one other question, because when you just said that, what made me think of was, are there any requirements in terms of tapping, in terms of like, does it need to be like you're in a quiet space, seated, standing, or could you do it if like your own kids were around and you were trying to, you know, doing noise in the background, or and maybe this is kind of a silly question, but like if I'm driving home from work and I'm like super stressed on my commute or something, like could I tap while I was driving and still potentially get some benefits? And like as I'm naming those things, you know, because it's a one-hander, so it's not like you're taking your hands off the wheel or anything.
Right.
So I'm curious, like if there's a baseline requirement for the setup.
There's not. I've done the driving thing. I've done it on BART, on our public transportation system, you know, where I'm kind of like, just kind of like hiding, you know, that I'm doing it. And sometimes even I've done it in my head, where I just, you know, I'm just imagining that I'm tapping on the points if it's just really not an appropriate place to be doing it. Also, I do want to say, if you're a very sensitive person, you don't necessarily have to tap on the skin itself, even if you just tap above. Some people are sensitive to the you know, the touch aspect of it, but you can just tap even above it, above the points. So absolutely, you can do it really anywhere. I mean, in front of your kids, it's a little obvious, but you know, if they're in the other room, you can be in there going, woo! So yeah, it doesn't take a lot of quiet or calm or meditation space or anything like that.
Yeah. Well, that's fantastic. So yes, let's have at it. I'm happy to be the guinea pig. Yeah, unless one of our other guests here wants to be the guinea pig, by all means, hop on. But otherwise, I'm happy to do it.
Great.
All right, so let's have at it. So I'm gonna sit myself up. I'm ready.
Okay, so let's look at the stress of the uncertainty. And where in your body are you holding on to that stress? If you like, go within, where are you holding on to it?
I have a little bit in my head, like sort of the tension. I can almost feel it in my shoulders, and I have it sort of at the top of my belly.
The solar plexus?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And on a scale of 0 to 10, what level of intensity would you give it right now?
Probably the stress around the uncertainty. In this particular moment, it was different at different days this week, but in this particular moment, I would say it's like a 7.
Okay, so for people who are watching, what we're going to do is I'm going to tap, and Katie's going to follow along behind me, and she'll say out loud the things that I say. but for both Katie and for everyone who's watching, use the words that if I say something but a different word resonates more with you or is more true for you, then use your words. So if I say I'm really angry and you're like, I was really hurt, then use hurt. And so if I say all this stress I'm holding on in my solar plexus and you're holding it in your stomach, then say stomach. And if something else comes up, then bring that up too. Just go ahead and say it. And let's give an example. All this uncertainty I'm feeling about school starting. You probably or may be feeling uncertainty about your own children and what's going to happen with them. And so this topic right now, uncertainty, is such a big topic. That's why we're going to just focus today on where we're feeling it and releasing the stress that we're feeling in our body around it. Yeah, this is a strange time for sure. And I think educators, the frontline workers in the medical industry and the teachers and the parents, I don't even know how to say it. You all know, because it's just a very, very uncertain and stressful time. Okay, so let's go ahead and start with our karate chop point and just repeat after me. Even though I'm feeling so much stress.
Even though I'm feeling so much stress.
Because of all the uncertainty in the world right now.
Because of all the uncertainty in the world right now.
And in my life.
And in my life.
I deeply and completely love and accept myself.
I deeply and completely love and accept myself.
Go to the top of the head. Just feeling so much stress.
Just feeling so much stress.
The eye. So much uncertainty out in the world.
So much uncertainty out in the world.
And the eye. I'm feeling the stress in my body.
I'm feeling the stress in my body.
Under the eye, this tightness in my head.
Tightness in my head.
In your nose. This tightness in my shoulders.
Tightness in my shoulders.
And my solar plexus feels it.
Even my solar plexus feels it.
On the collarbone. Of course I'm stressed.
Of course I'm stressed.
This is the most stressful time I've ever lived through.
This is the most stressful time I've ever lived through.
Under the arm. The uncertainty of when this will end it's just, I don't even know what to say. The uncertainty we'll just say it's stressful. The uncertainty of when this whole thing will end.
The uncertainty of when this whole thing will end is just stressful.
None of us know when it will end.
None of us know when it will end.
That's one of the key stressors.
It's one of the stressors.
There's a lot of stress right now.
There's a lot of stress right now.
How it's impacting our lives right now.
Sorry, I couldn't hear that one.
How it's impacting our lives right now.
How it's impacting our life right now.
Yeah, we're getting a little bit of feedback. I'm holding on to this stress in my body.
Holding on to this stress in my body.
And it doesn't serve me.
It doesn't serve me.
And it actually keeps me from dealing with the uncertainty at my best.
It actually keeps me from dealing with this uncertainty at my best.
And I know stress isn't good for my health.
I know stress isn't good for my health.
Stress may be a very appropriate response.
Stress may be a very appropriate response
To all the uncertainty.
To all the uncertainty.
But I'm willing to try a different response.
but I'm willing to try a different response.
Yeah, I'm willing to let it release from my body.
I'm willing to let it release from my body.
Me holding on to stress.
Me holding
on to stress.
Me holding on to stress.
Sorry about the feedback, but I know it's causing it.
It's all good.
Okay. It doesn't make the uncertainty any better.
It doesn't make the uncertainty any better.
It doesn't change where we're at.
It doesn't change where we're at.
This makes me feel bad.
This makes me feel bad.
What else did you say? Did you say anything else right here? Did something else come up?
Yeah, what's coming up for me is I don't want this stress to affect my body.
Especially because it can't change things.
Especially because I can't change things.
And I want to be at the top of my game.
I want to be at the top of my game.
So I release the stress. I choose to release this stress.
I choose to release the stress.
So let's stop as we check in. Think of holding the stress in your body from a 0 to 10. What would you give it now?
It's like a 5. It's interesting. It's like I feel like it's released in my head and my shoulders, but I feel it's still a bit in my in that solar plexus spot. It's like it's holding on there.
So what's still there? What's still got you tightened up in there?
So I feel like almost like my body is, or my mind is like holding on to not wanting to release the stress around it still. Still going, okay, well, there's, okay, I could, I'm trying to like override some of my thoughts, but part of my thoughts are going, I really don't know what's going to happen. And how am I going to do my work well with these kids if I don't really know, or should I just keep planning and working harder to learn everything I can? So it's almost like there's like a fear around how much too I have to do to then learn, like what may be ahead for all the stuff I'm going to have to potentially learn or unpack to try to do my job well. And so I guess that's what's coming up for me. There's like fear around that. It's not so much fear around even the learning so much as fear around, oh my gosh, it's going to take so much time and effort and like mental and emotional capacity to learn all these new things in the middle of all this other stuff, my own kids and my family and all that. So yeah, that's what's coming up.
All right, let's do some tapping on it. Even though I have all this fear about all this stuff I'm going to have to learn.
Even though I have all this fear about all this stuff I'm going to have to learn.
All the effort and energy it's going to take to learn it.
All the effort and energy it's going to take to learn it.
I deeply and completely love and accept myself.
I deeply and completely love and accept myself.
As if being a teacher isn't enough work.
As if being a teacher isn't enough work.
Now I have all this other stuff to learn.
Now I have all this other stuff to learn.
In between raising my kids.
Between raising my kids.
A relationship with my husband.
Relationship with my husband.
Living life.
And daily life.
Yeah. Now I have all this other stuff to learn.
Now I have all this other stuff to learn.
It's just so much.
It is just so much.
It's causing me stress.
It's causing me stress.
And it's making my brain go in circles.
It's making my brain go in circles.
I just don't know how I'm going to do it all.
Just don't know how I'm going to do it all.
And how am I going to support all my children, all my students?
How am I going to support all my children, my students?
I have all this stuff to learn.
All this difficult stuff to learn.
I have to do what I've always done.
I have to do what I've always done.
Plus all this other stuff.
It's all this other stuff.
It's too much.
It's too much.
I'm I've always managed to come through before.
Always,
Managed to come through before.
always managed to come through before.
And I can do a little bit at a time.
I can do a little bit at a time.
I'm not required to be perfect at it from the get-go.
I'm not required to be perfect at it from the get-go.
The main thing is to be present and compassionate with my students.
The main thing is to be present and compassionate with my students.
Everything else will come together.
Everything else will come together.
Always has before.
It always has before.
I'm a pretty smart cookie.
I'm a pretty smart cookie.
I can figure this out.
I can figure this out.
So check in again, 0 to 10.
I'm like at a 3 now. I felt like some big shifts in there. I feel like we got into the spot of some of the underlying things.
Yeah. So generally we keep tapping until we get to 0. So do you want to keep tapping, or should, I don't know how the time is right now, if we're on done with our time.
Since we have another guest here, or friend here, Kimberly, any thoughts? Would you like to keep doing one more round? I don't know if you're able to communicate to us.
Can you do the chat?
Chat. I know. Nothing in the chat. Well, let's see. Why not? Can we just do one more round and then, or it's up to you too. I want to make sure I honor your time too.
Oh, absolutely, for sure. So okay. That 3, the 3 that's still there, what's still in, what are you still feeling?
It's a little less clear. It's like the fear minimized a little bit, but there's almost like the word that's coming up for me is as like feeling not enoughness. Like there's still, even though like I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm a smart cookie, I can figure this out. It still feels like there's the sort of almost the size, the like enormity of the things I'm gonna have to manage this school year. Even though I can figure it out, it's still like, is that a humanly possible? Like it's like the enormity of the, it's almost like the time, and also curiosity around how I'm going to make sure not only that I figure out the stuff for my students, but that I figure out like how to make sure I take care of myself in the midst of it all, taking care of all these other people, like my students, my family, friends who need me, all the things. Yeah.
Even though all the things I need to do seem so enormous.
All the things I need to do seem so enormous.
Just seems like it could be just too much.
It seems like it could just be too much.
I deeply love and completely accept myself.
I deeply love and completely accept myself.
Let's just do a little bit more here. Even though I question whether I'm up for this, if I can actually accomplish this.
Even though I question if I'm up for this and I can actually accomplish this.
I deeply and completely love and accept myself.
I deeply love and completely accept myself.
The expectations are so huge.
The expectations are so huge.
Everything that's on my plate is just so much.
Everything on my plate is just so much.
It's a huge responsibility.
It's a huge responsibility.
I take this very seriously.
I take this very seriously.
I want to do a good job.
I want to do a good job.
But it's just an enormous amount to do.
Just an enormous amount to do.
Enormous amount to be responsible for.
An enormous amount to be responsible for.
What if I let people down?
What if I let people down?
I don't do a good job.
And I don't do a good job.
I know I'm a smart cookie.
I know I'm a smart cookie.
But it just, am I going to have the time?
Am I going to have the time?
And am I just going to be able to do it all?
Am I just going to be able to do it all?
It's just so much.
It's just so much.
I want to make sure I take care of myself.
I want to make sure I take good care of myself.
I could be doing all this work 24 hours a day.
All this quick 24 hours a day.
I'm still probably not getting it all done.
And still probably not get it all done.
There's just so much to do.
Just so much to do.
It's going to take a lot of prioritizing.
It's going to take a lot of prioritizing.
It's going to take a lot of dedication and commitment.
It's going to take a lot of dedication and commitment.
I've been there before.
I've been there before.
And I know that if I take good care of myself,
I know that if I take good care of myself,
I'll actually do better.
I'll actually do better.
I'm willing and I'm committed to giving myself good care.
I'm committed and willing to give myself good care.
Both in service to myself and to my students.
Both in service to myself and to my students.
My family.
And my family.
It's crucial.
It's crucial.
And I can do it.
I can do it.
What else would you say?
I didn't hear that one.
What else would you say?
What else would I say?
What would you say?
Oh.
What would you say?
I actually feel like I've had a bunch of shifts on a bunch of things. Yeah. What's coming up for me is, because what really shifted was when it was like, will I do a good enough job? And yeah, I guess what's coming up for me is I will take care of myself and I will do my best and that will be good enough.
Good. Perfect. That's perfect.
Yeah. That's like what's coming up for me. And I felt a big shift like in those little moments right there. Yeah. So yes, thank you. I'm lucky I got to be the guinea pig. And I hope everyone's watching. Kimberly said she's having technical difficulties. She's in a storm right now, so wherever she is. But she says it's fantastic. So thank you so much. This is so powerful. And tell us about how to find you and tell us the name of your books, because I know even though because I try to take a stab at tapping from time to time, but I still feel like very much a novice, and I always love when there's scripts for me. So tell us, where to find you, where to find your books, all that good stuff. So if people want to dig into tapping more, they can stay connected.
Yeah, if they go to lisagainichols.com, I have to be Lisa Gay Nichols because there's another famous Lisa Nichols.
Okay.
So I'm Lisa Gay Nichols, and that's my middle name, Gay. And both books can be downloaded for free there. The first one that I wrote was Surviving Your Out of Control Teen, and that was based on my own experience and all the things that I've learned in having a teen that was very troubled and who is now a young adult doing wonderfully well and who I'm very close to. And then my second book that just came out in July is Crazy Little Thing Called Teens. And so it's for moms of teens as well, but not where their teens maybe are just teenagers just doing standard teenager things like individuating and everything. And in both books, there's a really good chapter on how to do the tapping. There's an illustration of the tapping points. And like you said, they're both tapping books. And so there are scripts on things like feeling guilt or taking things personally, or I guess you can't think of another one. Kind of being taking too not enmeshed, but sort of that's along the lines. It's like being too connected with your teen, so that you're your child, so that you kind of feel their pain, kind of thing. So just there's different scripts, tapping scripts on different things that can. And I personally think it's. I wish I had done this work when my kids were little. I really believe that we wouldn't have struggled as much as we had. As we did when especially my son was a teenager, because I would have been different. if I had been able to do that work before. So,
Which is so applicable for us as educators, because when we have kids who, we work with kids who often have behaviors that are big because of whatever's going on for them. And so it can be so helpful for us to practice these tools so that we can show up as calm and present as possible for them. And it's not, and you already mentioned that, you know, we can also teach this to them. So for them to name their feelings and do the tapping. And so it's like a win-win situation. Like we can tap with them and their tap ins, like everybody's calmer, and that's what we're going for.
That's what we're going for. Exactly.
Yeah, awesome. So I will make sure to give everybody all your contact information. I didn't know that the books were free on your for download. That's amazing, Lisa. You're so generous. So thank you so much for spending this afternoon with us. We are so very grateful. I know this is going to be an assembly that everybody goes back and watches time and time again to just tap through those rounds to really relieve some of that stress around the uncertainty. So I'm so very grateful for you. Kimberly, I don't know if you're in a place now that you could potentially, if you have any questions. I can hear her.
Yeah, can't quite hear.
Well, if you, oh, no, so she must have logged out. Well, but it is so amazing. So thank you, Lisa. I am going to stop our recording, and everyone, again, I'll put all the wonderful contact information there for us so that we can all stay in touch and all learn more about tapping, thanks to Lisa Gay Nichols. Thank you, and everyone have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you.